Hello there, it's Jan here from JB Crafts. Thank you for joining me today. I've got a little tutorial today that's going to focus on stamping. So seeing as we're in the month of September, it's a very popular month for stamping, and in the industry there is what's known as Stamptember. So I'm going to do my Stamp With Me series again, which I did last year. So there is already a playlist of some stamped projects. But this month we're going to focus on different, stamping and different ways of using our stamps. So I'm going to start off today. I've done this particular design today. And we're going to start off with using our stamps to create decoupage. So what I've done on this one is I've actually created more than one layer with my stamp. So you can do this with pretty much any stamp. It works better with something that has got kind of a, perspective to it, where there's things in the foreground, things in the background. Now, I've only done 3 layers on mine. You can do as much as you want with this. I could have done more. For example, the stem here with the flowers on is in front of the little field mouse's tail, so I could have raised that part up and then gone with the flowers. But you can choose how much of this you want to sort of raise up and make more 3D. So what I did, I just went for the flowers here. So it's hard to see on the camera, but if I just tilt it a little bit, I'm hoping that you can see here that there is some depth. So I've done a section of the flowers to go over the top, and then I've done a third one just on this one that would be right in the foreground, and then I've also built this one up on the side here, just so that we've got a little bit more perspective going on. So that's what we're going to do today. Really easy to do. And then I've used my colouring pencils today. I've used my colour blend pencils from Spectrum Noir, rather than, I normally reach for the alcohol pens every time. And the last year when I did this, I did focus on colouring with alcohol markers, with watercolour medium and that kind of thing. So I thought, right, we'll have a go with the pencils this year, because they do colour beautifully. And those of you that are not as as fond as of the alcohol markers, I think sometimes the colouring pencils tend to get overlooked. So yeah, we're going to do that today. So the card itself is 6 3/4 inches square, so it'll fit in a 7-inch envelope, and it opens like so. And I've created an extra little panel on here today, and I've got, you could put anything in here. You could put a little note in here, you could bookmark. I've just used my blank gift card that I have lying handy. You could put that in there. And so yeah, this is actually a separate piece that's stuck on the back here. So daisy. And I just thought it was that little bit different, so I'm going to show you how I've put it together. The stamps, apart from this one, are from the actual stamp set. I'll show you that in a second. So Sending You Love, and then I Love This, Have a Nice Day. So just that little play on words, and then a tiny strip of some of the paper that I'd cut off the background here. So nice and simple to do. And then I want to focus on that panel with the stamping on. So we've got a little bit of ribbon, so we've got some texture on here as well, and of course the scattering of pearls, which is my sort of finishing touch to the cards. So let's pop that one to one side, and I'll show you how I've put this together. So to start off with, we've got the card base, and this was cut from a piece of A4, and this time I've actually gone for my Centura pearl. So it's got that lovely pearlized finish on it, and this wants to measure 11 1/4 by 6 3/4. So I've actually chopped a tiny bit off the end here, and then I've cut it down to 6 3/4. And then I've scored it at the left hand side here on that long side at 6 3/4 to make my square. And then this part, obviously we can't make this a full-size card from a piece of A4, which is where the idea came in, to pop that little piece on the other side. So you will then need a second piece that measures the same height at 6 3/4, but I've just gone by 3 inches this time, and then I've scored it here at 2.5 inches to make that little hinge that we're going to fit on the back here and create that panel. So the top layer just covers this one, and then we're going to have that overlap with the focal point. All right, so I'll show you that finished. You can see here we've got the seam on the back here. You can just see where this is joined. If you want to cover this with another piece, you can, but I don't think that looks unsightly. And then obviously we've got the overlap with the stamped part of the project, and then you've got that separate element, which is this one inside. Okay, so let's have a look then. We're actually going to pop some of this together and leave this while we concentrate on the stamping then. So this one, we'll start with the smallest one. You can see I've just taken a little notch out of here. So I've measured the center point here. All right, and then I've used one of my punches. Sometimes I use the circle punch. Sometimes I use this one and take a, you know, sort of small semicircle for a finger punch out of it. This time I've used an old label die, and I've just gone in slightly in the centre there. I've not gone the whole way, just gone in slightly and taken a little notch out of there, just so that people have got a hint that there's something inside there. So that's that one. And then I've created a panel to go on top of here, and I've created the panel for this side. So what we'll do is we'll stick the card together first. And because this is going to wrap around the back, we want to put our glue on the inside, because this bit is going to stick behind here like so. So on the inside of the tab that we've created, now I've just taken a very, very slight bit off the edges of here. Usually do when I'm making sort of glue tabs, just so that there's nothing sticking out behind the card. I'm going to put my glue on there. Just want to make sure that it's not going to sort of squidge out. And then we're going to wrap this around the back of the card. So I'm going to line up the front here, make sure that we're going right up to the score line, and get these edges nice and straight, and then fold it over the back. Okay, so let's just get that one in place, and then we can open it and make sure that we're nice and straight there. So I'm going up to the score line but not over it. And then when we're happy with that, we can give it a good press. So I can still see my score line so that it wraps over here nicely. And when we're happy with that, I'm just going to press where we've got that glue and make sure that everything's stuck down. All right, we can give it a press on the back as well, just to make sure that everything's good to go. So we've got the extension there on that card. And you can see this one's going to fold in and this one's going to go here. So to create the pocket, we also need to put some glue across the top and bottom here. So I am just going to pop a bead of glue right across this top section on that piece we've just stuck together. And then I'm going to go across the bottom like so, right to the edge there, to create our pocket inside. So then when we pop this together now, we've got glue along this edge here and glue along this edge, and then we can give that a chance to dry and talk about how we're going to decorate the tops. All right, so keep that together. You can pop clips on here if you wish. Same with that one. The burnishing I find helps with the glue. Same at this side. Just for that glue to grab, you could use some red line tape in there if you wish. Something that you know is going to hold in place, because we've got that element then in here where you can pop something inside. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to pop my punch back over the top of it, I think, because it's quite heavy, this, just to make sure that we've got that in place, and then we'll move it down. So for the panel on the front, we'll do that one for, in fact, the side panel I've got here ready. Chosen a couple of papers that coordinate, so I've got some wood grain paper, and then I've gone with the brown. Because the little field mouse I'm going to colour in shades of brown, I've picked that out of there. Now this one measures 6.5 inches, so I've used 1/4 inch increments on all of these today. So our card was 6 3/4, so this panel is 6.5. The actual width of the white panel was 2.5, so we've come down to 2 1/4. So that's for the brown. And then I've come 1/4 of an inch again. So this one inside will be 6 1/4 by 2 inch. Ink the edges of it just to add a little bit of dimension. And that one's going to fit nicely on that front panel. And you can see I've just taken a little bit of a notch out of here so that it matches up. And I did that by just holding it in place where I wanted it to fit, like this. And then I actually punched the whole thing together. So I got a little mark on my halfway line on the white layer, punched all these together before I actually did anything with sticking it. So I think that one's pretty much okay now. So we can put this one on here. So I don't know what my glue's up to this morning. It's got some little gungy bits on it. We'll get rid of those. And again, I'm going to continue with that because I've got this glue out. I'm going to continue with this one this morning. You can use your tape. You could use your all-purpose glue, but because I'm working on the pearlescent card, I do prefer the acrylic glue for this one. And then all I'm going to do is pop this in place. I'm going to cut that edge of that where we've done there, and then this should fit into that space nicely there with a little border. We've got 1/8 of an inch all the way around the edge, and get that one in place. And again, while that's drying, we'll pop that on there just to give it some pressure. And then the panel for the front, I've got a couple of bits left to do to this one. So I've got my pieces at the ready. So the main panel again is on the brown card, and that panel measures 6 1/2 by 4 1/4. So the bit that we've got left here measures 4 1/2. So I've just come down 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch from the top, and this one will sit on here. Okay, now before we stick that down, I've got a couple of bits that I want to do to it. The paper layer is 1/4 of an inch smaller again, so it'll be 6 1/4 by 4 inches, and I've stuck those two together ready. And then what I did is I've cut that wood grain with this die, which gives me this lovely, I'm telling fibs, it wasn't that die, Jan, it was that die. Yep, got the other half, the two parts to the die. Yeah, I've cut this one, where are we, which gives me, it's the other way, Jan, this shape. Okay, it's just got that lovely wobbly distressed edge, and then the other half of it is what was tucked behind here on the sample card. So all I've done is I've chopped it in half vertically with my guillotine, and I'm going to use this half on this side here. Pop that one up there out of the way. All right, I just wanted something to break up the pink before we put our panel on top. So this is going to stick straight onto the background. So I'm going to put some glue on here. I've gone round the edges again. Well, the edges that are going to show, I've gone round with that same vintage photo ink just to highlight the brown, the wood grain. And this one I'm going to position roughly where I've got the one on the other card. So I want a little bit of a border left and right, about like that. And then to make sure it's straight, I'm just going to follow one of the stripes on the paper and make sure that that's running nicely up and down. And then because this paper already had the design with this panel in the middle, with the break in the middle, I thought actually that looks really nice, and we have covered up a bit of it. So I went in my stash and I'm going to pop some ribbon over here just to sort of add another element to the card. So we're going to recreate this cross horizontal piece to go to break the vertical, and we're going to pop that on that side. So I'm just going to grab a couple of bits of my tape here to secure this on the back. We want our scissors. I'm just going to do a couple of small pieces like this so that I can secure this on the back of the card. So I'm going to use that line that we've already got here and just go either side of it and then pop that round the back. And once I know where that wants to be, we can pop our tape in, remove the liner, and then stick that in place. And then I'm going to do the same at the other side. I'm going to bring this across here and use that line in the middle as a guide. Pop that on here, little bit of tape, and just secure that on the back before we actually stick it down. So again, that one can go on there. And then we've just recreated that horizontal piece to break up that design. So now that I'm happy with that one, we can put that on the middle of the card, on the front of the card. So this one's going to go nicely on here, and that's all our background done ready. Okay, so let's just pop a bit of glue on that one. Again, you know, use your tape runners, use your double-sided tape, whatever you want to work with. I just avoid my all-purpose glue because it's a solvent-based glue. It can sometimes interfere with coated cardstock. So if you get that seepage out of the sides of the card, it can sometimes damage the coat. Because this has got a coating on it, it can sometimes damage it. So yeah, I tend to sort of avoid it for this kind of thing. So this one again is going to have that same border. And when we pop this one down, you should get a continuous line here across to the one that we've already stuck down. Okay, so top and bottom like so, and then give that a good press. And again, seeing as I usually use my block, but seeing as this is handy, we'll pop that. It's really heavy, the punch. We'll pop that on top and put it to one side. So then we can work on our stamping. So let's put the top on the glue for now. I need that back in a little while. So what I'm going to do then is I've already stamped it out and I've done some of the work because it does take a little while, this, and I don't want the videos to be too long. So the stamp set that I chose was this one. And it was designed by Sheena Douglas. And at the time, Sheena was working with Crafter's Companion while I worked there. And she designed this garden visitors range. And there's some beautiful imagery. There's other little garden visitors as well. But I just absolutely adore the little field mouse here. She created the wreath die as well, which I haven't used on this one. I just wanted the stamped image, and I wanted an image that had, as I say, got that perspective in it with the depth. So in here, if you have got this tucked away in your stash, it does come with a die to cut out the mouse, but I didn't actually use that. I just wanted to go freehand with it and just use this gorgeous little stamp set. So let me just bring this one back so that you can see it a bit better. So you can see we've got the stamp in there, and then you've got that Have a Nice Day sentiment along with a couple of others. So I've stamped this one out, and I have done some of the colouring, as I say, just to sort of get it going, because it does take a little while with the colouring. I've gone round the edge with the vintage photo, and then I've used a selection of my colour blend pencils here to colour in. So all I did was get a bit of scrap card and just test out some of the colours. All right, I knew I wanted these to look like cherry blossom, which is why I went for the pink. And obviously I've gone for shades of brown with the little field mouse. So what I've done is I've left, if you have a look at this one, I've left the shading on the field mouse to show you how I've built that up. And then I've got a little bit of the floral to do to show you how I've worked with the pinks. Now I use these very, very much like I use my alcohol markers. I tend to sort of build up the layers. I often work with either 2 or 3 shades of them. And you know, that's how I do it. There are lots of colouring tutorials out there. I don't claim to be a professional as far as colouring, but we're going to have a go. So for the little dormouse, then we want our browns and brown greys. So I've got 3 that I chose, which were where's the other one gone? That's a green one. Alpine sage, that's green. Where's my other one gone? Is it that one? It must be that one. Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to put those to one side. I've used those on. I'll talk through the colours that I've used. So if you have got these, if you've got the colour blend pencils, I have a full set of these, but I just went through and had a look at, you know, colours that went together. I have actually changed the way I store mine. When you buy these pencils, you get a selection of colours in each tin. And I've actually altered mine now so that I'll show you the tins. I've got all, I don't know what the top one is. me have a little look. This one is the greens and blues. I've actually put them together so that I've got light colours together. And I find this easier now. While I was working for the company, I had to have them in the colours that it came in. So, for example, this was the tin with the naturals in, and you got all these different colours in here. But I wanted them so that I'd got the shades together. So I can now choose some greens, choose some blues out of this one, and work out which ones actually go nicely with each other. So if you do have them, these may be from different collections of them. I've got stone, I've got pebble, and I've got timberwood. So the stone is a really soft brown grey that I've coloured the background in. Pebble adds a little bit of depth with a bit more of a grey tone, and then the timberwood is more of a dark brown. So we're going to use these to just finish off his detail. Now, I've been using this one quite a bit, so I'm just going to give this one a sharpen to get a little bit of a point back on it. So I've got my sharpener there, that one, that's enough for that one. And then all I've done is I've coloured the whole background, so holding this up quite high so that I'm not adding too much pressure, I've actually coloured the whole of the background of the mouse in with this one. All right, I've done a layer in the background, and then we're going to bring this one back and it's going to act as like a blender. So I usually end up with them in my hand like this. The next one is going to be the pebble. And we're going to start and add some detail. I'm going to follow the one that I've already done, and I'm going to think about where the different sort of shades would be. Now, in a lot of ways, Sheena's artwork is brilliant for this because of all the line art that she puts in here. So, for example, around here, around his nose, we're going to add some of that darker grey. Now, she's left a gap around the eye, and I'm going to avoid that bit with my grey. And I'm just going to bring this in. And I'm using it lower down this time so I can apply a bit more pressure. And we're actually going to put this one round where some of that shading is. So I know here where the flowers are. It's going to be a bit darker, so we'll get some of that in here. Round the top of his little ear. So cute, this one. I've got that line art here again, so it's left a little bit of light in the centre of the ear there. And then I'm going to come across the top here. Again, all that in the background where the flowers are, we're going to go darker with. And then we're going to come all the way around the top here, around the hairline there, into that ear. And again, you know, there's no right or wrong with this. You do how you think it should look. You know, at the end of the day, I am not a, professional, but you can see just adding that one layer in is making a difference to how this is coming together. And all I've done is follow that shading that Sheen has used on her design. Again, turning your artwork so that it's comfortable. And I'm going to go under the little nose section here. And then I'm also going to bring it down into this section because this is all shaded by where the flowers are there. Okay, so again, you can see already we've got that going. Now then, let me just double check because that one looks a wee bit dark, but no, it is the right one. So then I've got timberwood, and then I'm going to go in again, and I'm going to fill in a little bit more of the gap. So I'm going to come in where I've got this colour. I'm sort of going to go slightly over the grey and bring in some of that brown. Back of his little ear. I'm going to bring a little bit into here, not a lot because I want that light area in the centre. And again, just fill in little bits of it so that you've got, I want it to look sort of variegated. You know, the little mouse's fur isn't all one shade of brown. So again, I'm going to go into that back area here. It wouldn't be that light over this side if those flowers were shading it. So we're going to come into this side here. And I'm working into that darker, that brown grey that I've already done. I'm going to come up from where we put that brown grey in here. And some places I'm going to reach up to where I've already done. I'm going to leave that highlight in the middle. And we're going to have a little tiny bit in here in the whiskers. And I'm going to bring this one into the nose as well now. So we're going to add some depth here into that little nose. And again, I'm just going to leave a light area where his actual nose is at the front here. So you can see again, pushing it into that brown grey, we've now got some variegation in there. And then I'm going to go back to the lighter one, which was the stone that I'd already done the base layer. And I'm going to go over those, get those areas now where they've got that lighter area. And almost push this one into the other colours now, so that we were almost sort of like blending them together. Now you can use blending solution with these crayons. I don't often do that unless I'm colouring a really large open area and I want that seamless blend. I think for what I'm doing here, you know, the little mouse's fur would have texture, so I'm not worried if it's a little bit sort of blotchy in places. But where I did the first layer, I did like this far up the pencil, means you can't apply so much pressure. By coming down here like this, I can now add a bit more pressure, which gives it a bit more sort of depth of colour. And again, we're going to add it in here. And just sort of, all it does is like blur the lines. It blurs the lines where I've put those other colours in, and you get that kind of blended effect. Okay, so they are wax based, these. They're really, really nice pencils. And again, you know, if you want to go back in and add a bit more definition, I want it darker at the front here. That's going to be the darkest area in here, under the eye there. And this little bit under here wants to be a bit darker. And I think I'm okay with that now. We're going to go just that little touch there. And can you see how he now looks much more sort of fur-like rather than that flat colour? So we'll pop them to one side. And then I've already done the stem. I picked some greens out, and we've got, again, these will be from different sets. So I use the sage green and the fern green to make the flower stem and the main leaves here. I've done exactly the same. I applied the lighter one first, which is the sage, and then I've used the fern green to add some depth. And again, you can see, you know, that line art on here, where Sheena's done this cross hatching for the shading, is where we've put the extra darker shade. So that's that one. I'm just going to add a little bit of that up here, because it would be really dark underneath where those flower petals are, under there. Yeah, and then the alpine green is what I've used for the vine here, and these little tiny leaves, just these sprays off here. So that's that bit sorted. And then his little paws here, I've gone for buttercup, which is a really, really sort of light, almost a peachy tone for the little paws. And then that has left me with spice brown, which I did the tail here. And again, I've done this very lightly first, and then I've used the same colour to create the shading on here. So we've got his tail, and then that leaves me my 3 shades of pink for the flowers. And I'm going to show you on this one how I've created all that depth, and then I'll show you how I've done the decoupage. So again, we've got pink blush, then I've got sorbet, and then peony, which has given me this lovely sort of shading on here. So we're going to work on the little one here. I've just saved one of them to do. And again, I'm going to hold it quite high up, and I'm going to go for a base colour over the whole flower. So very, very pale. You can see that's what I've done here and on this one. All right, so I'll talk about the others in a second, but just a base colour of the pink there, that light pink, to get rid of the white from the card. Then I'm going to go to my second colour, which is the sorbet. And again, you've got that line art in there. So I'm just going to holding it much closer now so that I can apply some pressure. And in the bottom there, and just where those lines are at the top, we're going to apply a bit of that darker shading. So here at the bottom, a little bit at the top, and then inside the centre here would be darker. Then we're going to go to the darkest shade, which was the peony, And I'm going to go over that again, but don't come quite as far up as what I did with that second colour. So just in the very base of the petals, the very edge here, and then the inside at that very centre would be much darker. And then I'm going to go back to that light one again, just like I do with my alcohol markers. And then I can actually darken up that light shade a little bit. And by doing so, it'll pull all those three shades together. I'll leave this edge quite light because that's where the light would be hitting it. And you've got that colouring in there ready. And then all I did was grab one of my glitter markers here. This is actually a sort of a gold yellow, and just the little tiny stamens in here. We're just going to add that pop of glittery yellow. You can barely see it, but I know it's there. Okay, so that was how I've done the pink flowers. Now for the cluster, I want the whole cluster raised up as part of the decoupage. So all I've done is use my lightest one, held it up here, and just done a background area. I haven't even done the centre. Now this is not absolutely necessary, but when you're creating decoupage, occasionally you can just see under the edge of that first layer, because I'm going to raise it up with some foam pads. So I tend to just add a little bit of colour around the outside area. And then I've stamped it a second time, and I've just concentrated on this cluster of flowers. Okay, so you can see how I've cut out this part here, and I've done exactly the same technique as what I did here around these edges. I haven't done the middle one. I've just applied some flat colour in the middle. You can see the difference here with the shading and the non-shading, because we're going to go again with this one, and I've actually just cut that centre one out, and we're going to put that one over the top here. Where are we? Just there, to create that kind of decoupage. And then this one again, I've just given it that blush of base colour because we've got the one that we've cut out here, and we're going to pop them all on together. So like I said, really easy to do. It's just stamping more than, well, I just stamped 3 times. I stamped the main image once, then I stamped again and cut this bit and this bit away. And then all I did with this was just ink up that little part of the stamp and then cut this bit out. So rather than doing the whole thing again, I've just put ink over this area here and then cut this flower out. So what we're going to do with these then is, we've got the foam pads on the back. We need to see if they're going to play today. Are we going to release our backers? I always get to this bit and I always hold my breath. Here we go, look. So we'll put these into the little waste bin. I always have fun with these. I should do this before I start the videos, you know, because for some reason it's like, oh no, she's filming. Let's not play. Come on. You wouldn't think they'd be so hard to get off, would you? I don't know what it is about me and these. We have a very much a love-hate relationship. This one. Some days they come off fine. Other days they're just very, very stubborn. There we go. We've got those going now. So I'm going to use my tweezers now to position these. So that one's going to go right over where we've already stamped here. So I'm just going to line up that bottom edge here, line up that top edge, and drop that down into place. So everything around that we'd coloured on the back on the first image. Then we've got to go again. Come along. Oh, that one's playing okay. Yep. Ah, you see, it's got wind now that we're going. There we go. And then again, this one, I've just cut that centre flower. So this one I didn't bother doing too much shading on because we are going to cover it up again with that second piece. So we've got 3 layers. Now mine are only 1mm foam pads, so it's not creating a lot of depth. So if you're wanting to mail your card to someone, it probably would still go, you know, through the normal mail system. If you want to create more depth, if your foam pads are deeper, then you need to think about how you are going to sort of get it to the recipient. So again, this one, I've just done that one off this side of the branch here, and we're going to cover. So that's got that little pink blush of colour, just in case you can see underneath it. And then we're going to pop that one on there. So we've created that lovely panel now that's got that bit of dimension. You can just, I'm hoping you can see this on the camera here, where we've got this little bit of layering going on to create our own decoupage. And then what I want to do is I want to bring in my stamp, and I'm just going to add this word in here. So I need my brown ink, and I've still got the stamp on my little acrylic block here. I'm going to use dark brown VersaFine Clair ink so that it goes with the brown on the rest of the card. And then I just want to nestle this in here. Try and get it as straight as we can, and just go for that little spot just there. If you're not so hot with the acrylic blocks, you could do this first before you layer it up if you've got a stamp positioner. So you could do it in there. My cloth's just gone for a walk. There we go. So that's that bit done. That's all I wanted to do with that. Put that to one side, and then this one's good to go. So what I'm going to do this time then is we're going to bring our main card back in. Leave that one now. I don't need that one anymore. And then we're going to put this one onto here like this, but I just wanted to frame it. So I started first of all with the brown. I put the brown behind it. I think I've got a piece of the brown left here. That's that one. But I felt it was too dark. I sort of brought this in and just tried it, and I thought that's bringing in too much of, I didn't like the brown. It was too much, I felt. So all I've done is I've gone for a piece of the background white, and because we've inked this one, it stands off there, and it's enough just to give that illusion that we've got a matte and layer, and I think that looks really nice. So we're going to stick those two together. I'm going to put this one on here. Now on my sample card I used foam tape on here, but again, just to keep it nice and flat, I'm going to stick them together. This one measures 5.5 by 3 3/4. This one measures 5 3/4 by 4. So we're still working with those 1/4 of an inch increments. And this, the size of this one was determined by the stamp. I've just trimmed it, you know, sort of towards the edges of the stamp, and then worked from there. So again, we're going to use some of that acrylic glue around the edge there, and then get this centered on here. The only reason I've got my T for top on here is because I've already put some tape on the back, and I'll explain that in a second when we turn it over. All right, so we're just going to make sure that we've got a nice even little border, and just by inking that front panel we've got the illusion of those layers now. So again, give a little bit of pressure on there to make that stick. And then this one's going to fit on here now. So again, it's up to you how far you have it sticking over, but I wanted it to be sort of reasonably central-ish. She says. I want enough of this showing because we're going to add another little bit of the sentiment in. So I've actually gone through one of my other sets, and I wanted something that went with this. So I've got Sending You Love, and we're actually going to slot this bit in here like this. So I want enough of that brown that we did on the wood grain showing, and then I'm going to center it top and bottom so that I've got about the same here, and then it's maybe a little bit wider. I'll give you the measurements when we're sorted. So the first thing I'm going to do then is add some glue to the back of this, and we'll tuck this under the edge where it wants to go. So if I'm going to go there, I'm looking at about 1/4 of an inch from that line. This one's going to slide underneath, so I'm just going to lift it slightly, and then we can decide where we want that one. And I just want the words peeking out there, and again we'll go sort of like there. No exact science. Make sure that's on. Now you've stuck it over the tape, Jan, because you'd already got the tape on. So let's take that tape off there first. That would help, wouldn't it? And then we'll get that straight again where we wanted it to be. There we go. Do these things in advance to try and reduce the video time, and then forget that I've got them on there. That's it. I've got it stuck underneath now, and that one's good to go. Now, the tape, I said I'd come back to the tape. I find the easiest way of this, when you're going to have part of it, because this part sticks over the edge of the card, so we don't want any glue on the outside. So all I tend to do is flip it over, and you can see I've put my tape along this part here. So the tape wants to be contained inside that front panel with this edge free of glue. We don't need any adhesive on that edge because that's the bit that's going to overlap. So that's how I do it. And then we've got those two pieces now that we can take off. And I am going to add a little bit of the wet glue just so that I've got a bit of wriggle time to get this in place. Okay, so just where I've got this on here, I'm going to put a little bit of glue across that top edge. We're going to put glue on the back of here because this didn't have any adhesive on. I'm just going to run down here. Okay, and then get this in the right position. So we were working about 1/4 of an inch from this line here. I'm going to sort of eyeball about the same distance top and bottom, and then I happen to have got a line on here that I can make sure that sentiment is nice and straight. So I've got roughly just over 1.5 inches from the outside edge, yeah, on that side, and I am nearly 1.25, so it's slightly further over this way, but I'm okay with that because I wanted this element to show here. This is linking it to this side. It's breaking up some of that pink, and it also let the front panel shine. When I put the front panel straight onto the pink, again, it was a bit busy with all the colourful flowers and the background. So just adding this little bit in here to link it to this side has actually broken up that pink in the background and allowed the panel to become, you know, the focal point on the front there. So you can see now where we've put that down that there was no glue here. So this is protruding and it's nice and safe. And that is the basis of the card today. The last little bit that I'm going to do to it is I'm just going to grab my ribbon. And this was very much a last minute decision when I did the sample. Come on. And I just want to cut a bit off here. My scissors are now hiding from me. Where are you? There we go. I just need a little bit, probably about that much will do. And I thought, actually, seeing as we've got a bit exposed here, I am going to lift this just gently and slide this one underneath here like so. And then we're going to tie a knot in that just to add a bit more texture to the front of the card. So on here, I'm going to pull that. It looks as if you've tied the ribbon, the whole piece of ribbon, and it's a little cheat's way of doing it. And then all I'm going to do is trim it sort of almost level with the edge of the card there, and then I like to go at an angle, so we'll trim that one a little bit as well, and it just adds that tiny little bit of texture into your card detail. We've got that little bit of ribbon in there. So that's my design basically finished with that overlap here and our little pocket to add some goodies, whether it be, you know, so you could pop some money in there if you were hand delivering it. I wouldn't recommend putting any paper money in if you're going through the mail, but if you were hand delivering, you might want to pop some notes in there. It could be a bookmark or something in there. It could be a little letter in there or a note. It could be a gift card, which is what I went with. And this is what I ended up with. My ribbon's decided it wants to go that way instead of the other way. I don't know what's happened there. So I'm just going to use my tweezers to encourage it to lie. I want you to lay that way. That's it, like that. And finishing touches, as always, you know me well by now, those of you that follow me regularly, we've got that lovely little scattering of pearls on there, just to add to it, in my opinion. Felt it needed something up here as well, so I've gone for the brown up here because I wanted this to be the main focal point. And then the very last thing that I did, I have a black glaze pen, so this actually dries slightly shiny, and I don't know whether the camera will pick it up, but just on the eyes there and the edge of the nose, I've gone over with the glaze pen and let it dry, and you just get that sort of shiny element. As I say, I don't know whether the camera will pick it up. I can see it here. Just makes those eyes look a little bit more realistic than the ones that are flat on here. Now again, if you don't have that pen, you could use something like glossy accents or any kind of glaze and let it dry. But I just think when I'm doing anything that feature, you know, animals or critters, I just like to put that little tiny bit on there just to give that bit of shine and make it look more realistic. The highlight was already there in the stamp set. If you look at the stamp itself, the highlight's there, so I've just avoided that with my pen. So each eye's got, this one's got a tiny little one, this one's got the main highlight, and that's my design for today. So it's a gift card for want of a better one. So inside, let's just measure that one for you, because I did this one afterwards. It measures 4 inches by 6 inches. So it was just a scrap of card that I'd got left. I had got some little bits that I'd cut off because this was from an 8-inch paper pad, my pattern paper. Obviously it only measured 6.5, so I'd taken the bit off the spotty layer and a bit off the top. And yes, it runs the other way, but I'm okay with that. Just that tiny little strip to link it to the front. And then I used a heart stamp, some of my little dots with the dot marker, and I've gone round the outside to echo this panel with the vintage photo so that it stands away from the back of the card. This is not absolutely necessary. Some of you ask, can you do this element on the back of the card? Yes, you can. I just find myself, when you've got a lot of weight on the front of the card, adding that extra panel inside just stabilizes it so that you don't get this happening. My cards often used to topple when I first started making them, but just adding that bit of strength in the back allows them to stand up nicely, and then you've got that panel in there to add your gift card in. So I hope you've enjoyed that one today. I've had lots of fun with the colouring. I love colouring. I love stamping. That's where I started out my crafty journey, was stamping and colouring. And still to this day, I could sit and colour for hours. So yeah, getting those colour blend pencils out today has been really nice. So again, they were Spectrum Noir colour blend, but any of your colouring pencils, you know, there's the Prisma ones. There's lots of different ones out there on the market. If you've got them in your stash, go have a rummage. See what kind of stamps you've got and see if you can do the 3D aspect and make it into decoupage. So I'm going to leave it there. Please give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed that content today. Thank you for your comments. I love reading the comments and I do reply to them now. And yeah, the last thing that I'm going to mention on here, and I have put a post on my Facebook page at JB Crafts about this, is just a massive, massive thank you to each and every one of you out there that's hit that subscribe button, because my channel went through 6,000 followers earlier this week. And I am absolutely over the moon that in probably, 18 months I've been running the channel. Started in February last year, so around about 18 months, maybe just a little bit over, I have got 6,000 people interested in what I do, and that just blows my mind. Absolutely blows me away that there are so many people interested in what I do. I know some of you are regular followers. You've clearly got that notification bell and you leave me comments on all my videos, and I can't thank you enough for that. It does mean the world that people are interested in what I do. I have such lovely comments on the videos. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And let's hope that the channel continues to grow and I can continue sharing my crafting journey with you. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Enjoy what you've got planned for your day, and I'll be back very soon with another tutorial involving some kind of stamping. And I'll see you then. Bye bye now.